Hi everyone, it's Kim from Art Anthology. Thank you for joining us today. And we're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll let everyone have time to find us and connect. And then we'll start with our embossing folders and our Gilders paste wax today. I know some of you have seen this technique before, and you know how easy it is and what great backgrounds we can create. And if you're playing along with me today, all you need are your embossed pieces of paper and whatever Gilders paste wax that you have. So we'll give it just about 30 more seconds and then we're going to get started. For those who join us after we start, I think it will be very easy for them to pick up and see what we're doing. So if you're just joining us, we're going to get started here in just a few seconds. And I think we're going to get started. So today we are going to be playing with embossing folders and our Gilders paste wax and creating some just absolutely gorgeous backgrounds, but they are so easy to create. So this just gives you some ideas of some that I've done in the past, and we're going to be creating some more today. So let's get started. And what we need is basically paper and embossing folders. Now I am using a collection of embossing folders, and I'm only using 2 of the 3D. In fact, I'm only going to be using 1. Most of these embossing folders I dug out of my stash that are ancient. So if you say, what's the name of that? I'm not going to know, because these are very, very old, and these are those original, what I'm going to call 2D embossing folders, not the thicker 3D. I really hope this encourages you to go back and look in your stash and pull out some of those embossing folders that you just absolutely loved when you got them. And now we hardly give them a second look, because this technique will work with 3D embossing folders or those old-fashioned 2D. So I'm going to just start. I have white and black paper already embossed, and a lot of times that's just basically what I use. I love the drama that the black paper gives me, but the white paper then gives me other options. And we're going to do some different things today, but I want to start at the beginning. So let's just say that all you have is one color of wax. And a lot of times when people are just getting one color just to see if they like it, I encourage you to get a metallic, because a metallic goes with anything and has a beautiful luster after it's buffed. Just very dramatic effects with one color of wax. So I'm going to take my little handle with a mini ink blending foam, and you want the foam, and just, I keep my foams in my tin. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of wax, and I'm just going to rub it lightly. I'm not even going to rub it hard. And you can see how it makes that embossed image just pop. And that's all there is to it. I mean, how easy is that? Now, when we first put the wax on, the wax is not wet, but it is soft. And that means our colors will blend. And it also means when I go to buff it, I need to have it hard, because if I were to buff this now, I'm just going to basically wipe a lot of that wax back off. Because we're working on paper, I'm going to speed harden it. If you read the instructions on the can from the manufacturer, it says to let it sit for 12 hours to fully air dry. So I could do that, but again, it's paper. I know I can hit this with a heat gun and speed harden it. Again, it's not wet, but the wax is soft. So I'm going to pull my heat gun out here. I'm going to just give this a quick zap, and then we're going to buff it up. Okay, so I did that for what, maybe 30 seconds, and my heat gun hadn't even been warmed up. So I'm going to let this cool down, and then I'm just going to take a soft cloth and buff this up. And if you want, you can take like a paper towel. I just have a soft cloth that I use for this. And I'm just going to buff this up. And this will bring a beautiful luster to this wax. So it won't look so matte anymore, but it'll be more of a metallic, shiny finish. And I'm not sure if the light will catch that, but you can see how beautiful that is and how simple that is, and it gives it a metallic look. So let's say now you have two colors, and I'm going to just do this on the back side, and this is the deboss side, so it will look a little different than the emboss side, but I love to use both sides because you never know which side you're going to like better. So I'm going to use one of the colors. I'm going to use patina because patina plays so nice with everything. And let me just put this on, and I'm going to press fairly hard with this and get some of that wax down there on like the flat level of my embossed paper. And I think I'm at a point where I need to get a new sponge here. And again, I'm not trying to cover up the black paper. I want some of that paper to show, but I also want to get some color down on the flat level and not just keep it up on top of the embossed image, because I'm going to add a metallic to this. And I want all my different layers to show. So let's put that one up, and I'm going to pull out the German silver. And I'll show you the difference between the silver and the German silver. The German silver is a little more of a champagne color. And when I'm adding a metallic on top of a color, I use my finger because then I can keep it lighter and I can feel I have more control of where I'm putting this wax. And also, I don't want to pick up this patina color. If I use my sponge, I could pick that up and then put it back into my can. And where patina is pretty light, it's not a big deal. But with some of the darker colors, it's very easy to transfer a dark wax color into a light. And it won't hurt your wax, but you'll have that color in there next time you go to use it. So I'm going to just try to keep this on top of the upper level of the embossing here. But again, you can just see how easy that is. I can add as much or as little. I am going to flip this over because I'm going to add some of this German silver, just a little bit on top of the silver, because I want you to see the difference. And you certainly can mix up your metallics. And I will heat both sides of this. But silver is truly silver. And then the German silver is more of a champagne color. So here's the patina and the German silver. So let me hit this with the heat gun. We're going to buff it up then. And look at how shiny it is. Now you can continue to add layers of wax even after you've buffed it up. You can continue to add wax just like I did here, but remember you want to let it harden, either air harden or hit it with the heat gun again, because we want to buff up whatever wax that we just added. It's sort of like when we were little kids and we polished our shoes. We wanted that beautiful shine, so we had to buff them after we polished them. And also it prevented us from getting shoe polish on the furniture. So we kind of have the same principles that apply here. So let me just stop there, and maybe you can see how nice and kind of a beautiful luster this has compared to this side. And I'll finish buffing the other side. If you're in the right light, you can really see a difference. And I'm going to pop this over and I'm going to buff where I added that German silver. To give that a beautiful luster. So how simple. And this is the other side with the patina and the German silver. So we've got a background ready to go. I would trim it down, even up my edges, and I'm ready to go. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take a piece of black cardstock and a piece of white cardstock. They're the same embossed image. And we're going to use the same 3 colors on both. So you can see how just the color of cardstock can change the look. Let me just grab, let's see here. I'm going to take patina because, again, that's such a good color, and try not to think. I'm just going to pull these 3 colors out. They may look great together. They may not. I'm not going to worry about it. So often people spend 10 minutes trying to pick out the perfect color combination. Just pick 3 colors. It does not matter because they are going to blend. And when we add the metallic, I'm going to get a new little sponge out here because I think that one has seen better days. Okay, and the metallic brings all the colors back together. So I'm just going to be pretty generous, especially with my first color, and I'm working from light color to dark color. And there's a reason for that, and it's nothing to be anything artistic about. It's just practical. If I start with my dark color, because the wax is soft, so if I had started with pinotage and then I took my sponge and I was adding, say, patina, I would be picking up some of that pinotage color. And when I go like this, then I'm going to be putting it into my patina wax, which is not what I want to do. Now, if you do that, again, don't panic. It's not serious or anything. I just take a paper towel and kind of wipe it out. And my yellow has probably had every color in the world on it. So when I go to soften it up, I just, put a little bit of the odorless mineral spirits, and we'll do that here with one of the colors. But that kind of just mixes it back in. So don't panic if you do that. I've done that more than once. Okay, so I've got my first color on. Again, I want to get some of this patina, whatever my first color is, down on like the flat part, the lowest level of my embossed paper. But I don't want to cover up all of the black or all of the white. That is part of my dimension. So I want to leave that there. So I'm going to add violet next. Same process. And patina is a light color. So if I get some patina in my violet, it's not a big deal. Now I'm going to use a little lighter hand, and I'll have a little bit of this down on that lower level, but I'm not going to try to totally cover up all of the patina I just put on. So I'm just going to randomly go around. And the waxes are soft, so they are mixing. So let me come over and do the same thing. You'll probably be able to see it a little better on the white. But if you look, you can see kind of in here where the violet and the patina are mixing. And then areas that were white that I'm now hitting with the violet, it will just stay the violet color. So the goal is just to have fun and not overthink what we're doing. Okay, so already you can just see the difference between using black and white paper. And again, you can use any color of cardstock. I'm going to add a little of the pinotage. Now, this is a red, dark red color. You can see that it's cracked, but I'm not worried about that because it's still soft enough I can pick it up. I don't want this so creamy that it's just nothing. When I put it on, it's just nothing but pinotage. I want to be able to control this a little bit. So I'm keeping this on the drier side, and I'm going to use a light hand. I'm not going to press down hard, and I'm also not going to go over absolutely everything I just did. I want those other colors to show. It would be so easy just to kind of rub this on hard and just cover up, especially on the top layer of the embossed image, everything. So light hand. Now, if you do get too much on and you think, oh, I lost all my violet or I lost all my patina, you can still go back and add those colors in. And if you haven't used the waxes before, again, just practice with them. So let's say I wanted to add, just to show you, a little more violet back in. Or I could do the same with patina. Now is not the time to do this because I have that pinotage on. And if I do that, I'm going to pick that color up on my sponge. So I'm going to use my finger. And let's just say I wanted to put a little bit back in. Now I do want to wipe my finger off in between. Otherwise, if I don't, I'm picking that red up. And if I do this without wiping my finger off, I'm going to have pinotage in my tin. So, and I'm just going to add just a little bit. Okay, but that's how easy it is to do. If I wanted to add more patina, same thing. I can just continue to work on this until I'm happy. So now that I've got my colors on, when they blend, I think they actually look really great together. And you can see the difference, how much darker this one is compared to the white cardstock. So you may have a personal preference of which one you like. Let's see. Let's take, I'm looking at the metallics I have out. Let's take, this is Inca Gold. And again, I apply the metallics with my finger so I can control it. And I can feel and stay on top. And then I kind of know how much pressure I want to use. Now, this is sort of a dark wax, a dark metallic, and I'm putting it on a somewhat dark color combination here. So I'm going to finish with this. And this happens where I'm like, oh, that's kind of dark. So I could go with that. And if you like that, go with that. But you know what I'm going to do? I want to lighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to add some German silver. And let me just go over this. So I can just continue to add. And if I really wanted to add a lot of kind of bright highlights, I could use the silver. And I'm not going to cover everything up that I just did, but this will bring a little bit of light back into it. And let's do that on this one as well, because, and I'm not even going to do the Inca Gold because I know this will be even darker. So let's do just our German silver. And I sometimes, like, this is so open, it's easy to get it down below, and that's okay. But I am going to just try to be light-handed, get enough on there, but not press real hard. And you can add as much or as little as you want. Okay, now this, again, remember, this is one of those old-fashioned 2D, and look at how well this works. It does not have to be 3D. So now let's buff this up. I need to hit it with the heat gun, and then I'm going to buff these up, and then we'll take a look at them. Okay, so this one is still kind of hot. We're going to let that cool down, and let's buff this black cardstock one up first. And I use fairly decent pressure on this. If you don't have to use every ounce of your strength, but if it doesn't seem to be buffing up, and you should be able to feel it. This should be slick, and this will just kind of be waxy. You'll feel the difference. So if it's not buffing up like you like it, add just a little more pressure. Okay, so there's one of them. And let's do our white cardstock. And there will be a little bit of wax, especially like there's the pinotage coming up. And another reason that we buff it and I can really see this one starting to get that beautiful sheen to it. Okay. So there we go. Same exact embossing folder. One black cardstock, one white cardstock, same colors. And what a total difference. So you can see how just changing your cardstock out can change the look. So I want to do something else, and I'm going to turn and get a clean page here. And I like to work on these magazines, an old magazine, because then it keeps my cleanup a lot easier, and I'm not trying to clean up the wax from my craft mat. And sometimes I get these like little crumbs. You'll see me like just kind of tapping it. That I don't want to get on the floor because it's wax, and if something steps on it or whatever, it will just spread it out on whatever surface it touches. So I want to do something a little different. I'm going to start with a piece of white cardstock. Again, this isn't one of my old 2D embossing folders, but I'm going to add some color to it before I add my wax. And I like to do that to change it up. So I'm going to, I pulled out, I love this mermaid color. This is Art Anthology Sorbet. And if you remember, the sorbet has a little bit of sparkle in it. And I'm just going to put a light coat of this on here. I don't want it real thick because I want it to dry fairly fast. And again, this is just another layer. So if I wanted this totally coated, I might as well just go get some cardstock this color. But I'm just going to add a little bit, and this will have the sparkle in it. Just a thin coat. Again, I'm not going to cover every little bit of white, and I am going to try not to get too much of it built up in the embossed area just so it will dry faster. So I'm just going to take and add this. Again, this just gives it another look. And you can do this with any of the dimensional paints. I just love the mermaid color. I love the sparkle in it. So that's just the one I pulled out. And let me just finish that up. And I'm going to leave that white. I don't want, again, every square inch of my white covered. And I'm going to set this aside to dry a second. I want to make sure it's dry before we put the wax on top of it. And I could hit it with the heat gun, but I'm going to set this aside. And we're going to start on another technique. And I can get this waxed up while this one dries. So for this one, I am going to pick out a couple colors that I know I want to use for this specific technique. And I'm going to start with the canary yellow. And I'm going to just tell you my process, and then you're going to see why I'm doing things a certain way here in just a minute. So I'm going to be pretty generous with this, but I'm going to try just to keep this on top of the embossed area. I'm not going to go down. I want to keep that like lowest level as clean as I can. If I get some of the wax on there, it's not a big deal, but I'm not going to be pressing it down hard. I'm just going to try to put a lot of this yellow, because when I add my tulip red, that is a potent color, and I know it's going to just cover up a lot of this yellow. So I'm going to be fairly generous. I'm going to try to hit some of these little paisleys here off to the side. And again, I'm getting some on the lower level, and that's okay, but I'm not pressing hard into that. So I'm just going to finish these up. Now, this is a color combination that I had tried a while back just in playing, and I loved what it did. So hopefully we'll get it to do the same as before. I will show you one that I did that didn't turn out quite like I had anticipated it would, because that's always a possibility, but that doesn't mean I threw it away. It just means I worked on it some more until it looks a little different, but I still like it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is add some of my tulip red. Now, I know my tulip red is starting to get dry and I want it a little creamier. So you can see how it's starting to really crumble, and I want it to be a little creamier. So I'm going to use my odorless mineral spirits. Remember, these are not water-based. I cannot add water. I have to add turpentine, and I like to use the odorless mineral spirits. So I'm just going to add a little bit in. Now, normally, if I were working on my own, I would just, put the lid on and come back, let it soak in, put the lid on and come back to it in a minute or two. But I'm going to just do it right now. When you get your wax, you get a couple of these little sticks. Don't throw these away. And then all you have to do is just work that mineral spirits in there. You can make these as creamy as you want. You probably don't want to make them so creamy they're like soup, especially the darker colors. But get it to the way you want it. Now, normally I would probably put just a little bit more in this, but you can see how you can pull all those little like pieces together. And now this will just be, I'll keep this, and this will be my tulip red stirring stick. And let me just see, I'll pull some of that off. So let's try it. If it's still a little drier than we want, we can add more, but better to try it, I guess, than have it so wet that we have it everywhere. And I want a fair amount on, but I don't want to cover up all of that yellow, the canary yellow. So I'm going to just go over it lightly just so I can build up some color. But again, I don't want to cover up all my yellow. I want some of that showing. And we'll just hit some of those others. And the yellow and the tulip red, that's probably one of my personal favorite combinations, just because I love those two colors together. I love the tulip red. Pinotage is another well-loved color. It's a little more cranberry, darker color, maroon color maybe than the tulip red. Okay, so we're done with that. And I am going to add just a little bit of the metallic, and I'm going to add silver because I know we'll see this. I'm tempted to add one of the golds, but I know we'll see the silver, so we're going to add silver. So again, I want to just keep that on top, and I don't want to get now rid of all my red, so I need to just kind of not put too much on. All right, and now let's hit this with the heat gun and buff it, and then we're going to be ready for a second step. All right, let's buff this up. Ooh, I'm going to let that cool for just a minute. I'm going to set this one out of the way. So I'm going to let that cool and pull out one more thing that we're going to use on this. And I'm going to spray this with the coloration spray again from Art Anthology. This is Raider, so it's the black color. And you can use any color that you want, but this is just a combination that I played with before and I know I love. So let me just give this a second to cool down. And then let's buff this up. And I for sure want to buff this before I add the spray because I don't want to try to buff this when it's wet with the spray. I'll just make my paper pill up and tear. Okay, so now you can see the nice sheen on that. Now, the reason I did not want to put wax all over the lower level is because I want my stain, or excuse me, my spray to go in there and stain the paper. So I'm going to get a baby wipe out, handy, ready to go. And the wax is going to resist the spray. So let me just kind of get things out of the way here so I don't have everything, the black spray. And I'm just going to spray this. I'm not going to soak it. I'm just going to give it, cover it. And now I'm going to go back through because I want that ink to go down, that spray to go down to the base. So if I use a baby wipe, it's resisted on the wax and I don't want it drying on the wax. So I'm going to just kind of rub the wax part, press that down, let that black spray soak in. Now, if I just sprayed it and left it, the spray will dry on top of the wax, it'll puddle and just dry, which is not the look I want. So I am just going to kind of lightly wipe. I don't want to make this super wet. but I'm just going to go back and wipe that off. All right. And then that I'm going to let dry. But I just love that technique. Now you're like, oh, well, I could just use that with black paper. Yes, you could do the same color, same thing with black paper. But this just does give it a little different look. And if I want to go back and hit it with a little more silver wax, I think I'm going to do that, because I didn't put a lot of silver. And if I really want to make it pop, I'll just do it on a couple here. So like this one hardly has any silver. I'm just going to do it on a few. I won't do it on all, and you could see the difference. But you can see how I can go back. Now I am going to finish adding a little more silver, and then I will hit it with the heat gun and buff it up. But I want to let that coloration spray dry a little bit, because if I start rubbing my paper when it's wet, again, the paper's just going to tear and pill up. So totally different look. Now here's one that I did, and I didn't have enough of the wax on there. So you can see how the spray kind of looks like it took over the wax. Well, I wasn't generous enough with the wax, but I didn't throw this out. I just went and added, this time I added one of the golds back on here. But if I was like, okay, you know, don't throw it away, I still like it. It's still kind of neat. Let me get a clean finger. And I could go back through and add some of my colors back in. And again, I'm just going to stay on top and kind of rework it. And this will have a different look. But just because it's not the way you expected it to turn out, don't just throw it away. Go back and play with it and create something different with it. And I'll go back in and add some red and probably some more metallic. I won't add any more spray. But how easy is that? Okay, so you can use the sprays. Let's go back to the one with the paint. I'm going to turn the page here. And now we're going to add some wax to this. I'm going to use white, because white you won't really see the white, but it will mix with this. Let's do patina. I know I'm kind of stuck with patina today, and the iris blue, because I know these two will blend beautifully, and the iris blue is a gorgeous color. So let's start with our white. And this one, boy, I really overdid it with the mineral spirits, and it is really, really soft and creamy. So I know I can be pretty generous with this, and I'm just going to rub it. You really won't see it. Wow, that's a little too generous there. Let me wipe some of that kind of up. But you still see that paint color underneath. And we'll definitely see the white up there, which is fine. So this just gives you an idea. Just think, if this was a dark color and I had it this creamy, ooh, I'd just be coloring everything. And if it's too creamy, just in time it will dry out. That's all I can say. It will dry back out. So just be careful with how much pressure you add. And then if it's too creamy, you know, I could just wipe this off before I do it on my paper. So let me add the patina. And it's going to mix with the white. And again, this is a light color, and you're going to think, oh, it matches the background. Yeah, it does, but it's going to blend beautifully with the iris blue. So another question usually is about paper. There's nothing special about any of this paper. Anywhere from 65 to 110 pound cardstock is what I have in my room. That's what I use. Usually on the 3D folders, I like to use 110 just because it's heavier cardstock. But on the lighter ones, or on the original 2D ones, 65 pound works great. I mean, just use what you have. I do spritz the cardstock just out of habit now, and that does help prevent it from tearing. So again, just use what you have. Don't go out and think you have to buy something special. And if you want to see if something works, then then try it. And I'm going to show you that here in a minute, where I needed something a little different. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try this. So the iris blue is a pretty potent color. So I'm not going to be heavy-handed with this. I'm going to be light again. So here I have kind of some little crumbs. Let me knock those off. I'm very, very light with this. And I don't have to go over everything. But where there's no patina and it's mixing with the white, it's very light. And then I can see the areas where it's mixing with the patina. So let me just do this on the back. That is such a beautiful, deep, deep blue. But again, when it mixes, it really softens the color. All right, let's add some silver to this, just because I think the silver and the blue look great together. And I'm going to use my finger. And again, I'm not going to go overboard. I'm going to just put it in certain spots. And the one thing I will say, when I add the dimensional paint, like if I had kind of a little bit of built up paint, or I can sort of see the sparkle in this, sometimes the wax hits and you'll see it define that sparkle or that little built up bit of paint, which is kind of neat. So don't think that's, oh, ruining it. That's kind of neat when it does that. So let's just put a little bit more of this down. And then I'm going to hit it with the heat gun, and we're going to buff up our Parisian scene here. Now, if you decide that you want to paint some of your white paper before you put the wax on it, just remember to let the paint dry, or you can hit it with your heat gun, but you do want it to be dry. You don't want that paint to be wet when you're adding your wax, and it dries pretty fast. Okay. So let me buff that up. That's cooled down. And I'm just going to go through and give that a good buff. And you will have wax that comes off. Usually it's the darker color wax. All right. So I love that scene. What a neat base that would make for a card. And you could add a die cut on top of it, or just some die cut words, or just leave it as this if you want. And again, I would trim it down and neaten it up before I added it to my card base. But that silver just gives it this beautiful shine and ties everything together. So I want to talk about a metallic paper, or a foil paper, I should say. We've talked about using the waxes on jewelry and metal, like a metal embellishment. And I like to use it on like a metallic cardstock. So this is what I use for my metallic cardstock. And I'm not going to actually do this because it takes a little while to build the color up, but I want to explain my process. So what I use is this HVAC foil because it is adhesive back. So this is what they use for heating and air conditioning units for the, the conduit. You can get this at a hardware store, and it comes in different widths. I think this is 2, maybe 2.5 inches, somewhere in there. And I love it because all I have to do is peel off the liner and it's adhesive back. I don't take foil and apply glue to it. This is so easy. I take a piece of white plain cardstock, and then I just cut a couple strips and put it on there, smooth it out. Yes, I will have a seam where it crosses over, but you're not going to see it. After you emboss it, you will not see that seam. So after I apply this and burnish it down, make sure it's stuck down good, then stick it in your embossing folder and run it through, and then it comes out beautifully embossed. When I add my waxes, I do it in the exact same way. But when you work on the metal, it's a little different, or something, and I'm going to call this metal, even though it's a metallic paper. It's very, very easy to wipe it back off. So if you say you put something on, you absolutely hated it, take your heat gun to it, and while it's hot, wipe it off. But if you like it, let it either air dry, which is kind of how I prefer to do it, or hit it with your heat gun, but let it totally cool down, and then lightly buff it. If you don't let it cool down and you buff it, you will just wipe everything off that you just put on there. Again, I like to just let it air dry, come back the next day and lightly buff it. And then I generally add another coat or two. I let it build up. So this is one where I've added just a multitude of different colors. You can't be in a hurry for these. And I would work on several at a time, come back, add some more the next day, lightly buff it after it's hardened. But if you like that look, it's well worth it. And then, you know, the metallic from the paper shines through, and I still add a metallic wax on top of that. Probably not silver on this, something else. But it's fun, especially if you're into maybe the steampunk look, but you can use this on anything. I mean, this would be great even like on our paisley. It doesn't have to just be a steampunk look. So if you want to try that, again, it's that HVAC paper. I love that because it's already adhesive backed, easy to work with. And you can quickly make your metallic papers. So normally I stick to black and white paper, but today I thought I'm going to do something different. I have some craft cardstock, and we're going to play with this and just see what it looks like. And it will be, again, different, but let's play with some different colors. Let's see, what do I have out here? We haven't looked at the verdigris. Let's do that. And let's do rust just for kicks, because that's probably one people, oh no, I'll tell you what, let's do slate, because that's a color I think people are hesitant about, because, you know, it's not what they don't think is a beautiful color. And oh, let's just try violet. When I look at those, I think, oh, they probably won't go together, but we're going to play with it. So we're going to start with our violet because it is by far the lightest color. And again, this is just a regular old 2D embossing folder that I pulled out from probably many years ago. And I'm going to be pretty generous. I want to get this down on that flattened part, because when I add my other darker colors, they're going to mix with the violet, and basically my violet will pretty much just disappear. And let's add a little slate to that. Again, my slate looks dry, but it's creamy enough. This is a fairly dark color, and probably not one that I want to have super creamy. My black is another one that I keep pretty dry, so I don't have it like taking over everything. And I want some of that lavender or the violet to show through. And then let's add the verdigris. And this one again is like the iris blue, pretty potent. So I'm going to just be pretty light-handed. And this is mixing, again, the verdigris is a pretty potent color, but it's mixing with that violet and the slate. Okay, let's call that good. And let's see here. What metallic do we want? Even though this is kind of dark, we'll get out the Celtic bronze and the copper. We'll see, we'll play with these two. We haven't looked at these before. And again, these are dark. And so my Celtic bronze, you can see cracked, but it's okay. It's still creamy. And I can still put that on there. I'm going to try to stay on top here. We'll see how well I do with that. When you play with your different embossing folders, some you're going to find easier than others, just depending on what you're trying to do, because some of them, there's so much open space, and others, they're so compact with so much embossing that it's sort of hard to get down to like the lower level. So after you play, you'll kind of find the ones that you like for what you're going to do with them. And this one, I just am going to be just a little more light-handed and not press too hard so I stay on top there. And again, I don't have to do every single little line here. Bounce around a little bit. And if I decide, oh, there's not enough, or I don't see this metallic enough, I can go back after I buff it and add some more. All right, so let's hit this with the heat gun. And we'll let this cool down for just a second, and then we'll buff it up. Let's see here, get on a clean page again. All right, so let's buff this up a little bit. So this is going to have a different look than our white or black cardstock because there's not as much contrast. I can still see the craft color cardstock, but it doesn't pop quite as much just because, again, there's not the contrast between it and the wax. But it's still beautiful. So again, try different color cardstocks and see what you like besides just black and white. Here, I want to show you this. This is one, just to show you, this is where I painted this, and I think I painted this with one of the yellow paints. I couldn't tell you which one. And then added the wax, and then the metallic on the embossed. And here's one where I used the spray. I used the Sedona spray on this, and this is craft cardstock. You can kind of see where the spray soaked in there on the end. But I used the wax and then did this with the spray. So it doesn't matter what color cardstock, you can use any of these techniques on any of these cardstocks. Here's one that I just did a little different color. Okay, I want to show you one other kind of cardstock that I normally wouldn't think to use, and it is a glitter paper cardstock. I needed something that was sort of mystical for something I was working on, and I thought, why don't I try some glitter? And this has a totally different look. So this is what we're going to do. I'm just going to put a couple of waxes on. Let's use our good old patina. And I'll be fairly generous with this because I do want to get it on the bottom. Now this, the embossing folder that I used, kind of puts like a little, I don't know, teeny tiny plaid design underneath the swirls here. So I'll be fairly generous with that, but this is going to be just totally different than our solid color cardstock. And again, when I first did this, I wasn't sure how this was going to work, but I loved it. Okay, so let's do our iris blue. And again, I don't want to cover the whole thing up. And even though this is nice and shiny, I'm going to add a little, I'm going to add silver just to kind of pop out from the gold. Just a little bit, not a lot. I mean, if you didn't want to add the metallic on top, you certainly don't have to, but okay. So I'm going to hit this with the heat gun real quick, and then we're going to carefully buff this up. And we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to let this sit and cool down for a minute and just show you a couple things, because you're like, well, what could I do with these after I make them? You can use them for a card base. You can cut them up. You can just add a die cut to them. So let me just show you here. I'm just going to grab some of these. I don't know how well some of these will go together, but let's just say I had a background. Let me see here. Let me try this one. Again, I'm just got a couple things I'm playing with here. If I want, I could just add some die cut words and make that the front of my card. Quick and easy. I could, now I realize that doesn't probably go together too well, but I could just add something that I have put together, layered up, and add that die cut. Again, play, play, play. And if I was doing this, then I would think about my background color a little bit, but you can just see how easy it is to, here, let's add our happy birthday to our Parisian scene. And I have a brick one here. Let me just do that. That looks a little better. So that gives you an idea of how you could just have all these backgrounds made and then just go ahead and use them however you want. One other idea that I like to do is sometimes I have a piece already done and I want to die cut it. So I use this one for a handle for an umbrella. And then I thought, let me use this one and I will cut and use that for my umbrella. So you can die cut these up too and use them as pieces on your die cuts. So don't be afraid to die cut them. They don't just have to be a background. So I'm going to buff this one up real quick, and this will be the one that we end on today. But I hope showing you this glitter cardstock inspires you to go out and just look through your cardstock and try whatever you have. I mean, try printed cardstock and see what you think about that. But I love how this still has sparkle, and yet the wax has knocked some of that back. But the glitter from the cardstock still comes through. So many different things we can do with our wax. And you saw how easy it was to create everything that we did today. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again in the future.